All right, it should have looked like this. Again, all your degrees, all your radians, and all your coordinate points on the outside. When we talked about it initially, we hadn't gotten a sine, cosine, and tangent and those signs. So now that we have talked about it, where those positive and negative things are, like where it says positive and negative in each quadrant, you want to put the trig functions that are positive and negative in these quadrants, okay? Not x and y. The x and y is how you get there, but you want to put the trig functions. So we talked about it yesterday, but one of the ways to remember them is all students take calculus. In the first quadrant, all are positive. You could literally write all next to positive. You don't have to write them all out, okay? And none next to negative, but they are all positive. In the second quadrant, your sign, the S stands for sine, sine and its reciprocal function, which would be cosecant, are positive. The other four are negative. In the third quadrant, T for tangent, tangent and cotangent are positive. The other four are negative. And in the fourth quadrant, positive is C, which is cosine, its reciprocal function, which is secant, and then the other four are negative. So again, when you fill it out tomorrow and you'll get back, it's the identical thing to what you just filled out. That will be one side of your quiz. What you just filled out, make sure those four corners have your trig functions of what are positive and negative. Yep. 60. Yep. So 60 points are going to come from your unit circle. Okay. It is that important. Good? Yeah? Okay. So now let's fill out. All right, so numbers 1 and 2 say find the point x, y on the unit circle that corresponds to the real number t, then find the sine, cosine, and tangent. So 1 is an over 6. It should be on the top of your mind that your over 6's are root 3 over 2 and 1/2. And then 7 pi over 6 is in the third quadrant, which means it's a negative x and a positive y. Or it means tangent is going to be, well, in that quadrant, tangent is positive and the other ones are negative. Sorry, this is both negative. Those are both negative. Okay, so then the sine is 7 pi over 6 is negative 1/2. The cosine is negative root 3 over 2. Because it's an over 6, our tangent is root 3 over 3. So you can also include that one. And then the cosecant is the reciprocal of negative over 2, so it'd be negative 2. The secant is the reciprocal of cosine. It'd be 2 root 3 over 3, and again, negative. And the reciprocal to root 3 over 3 is the other option for tangent, which is root 3. So those are your 4. Oh, it didn't even say to do those last. You are going to get asked to do all 6 on your quiz, so make sure you know how to do all 6. I know the warm-up just said the first 3. And like I said yesterday, this is not going to be an angle that's straight from your unit circle. It's going to be coterminal, so it could be something like 17 pi over 6, and you'd have to... and you'd have to be able to find the trig functions of those, okay? So we talked about that if it was bigger than 2, so let's say it's 17 pi over 6, you would convert this into a mixed number, right? This would be 2 and 5/6 pi. I take the whole number part and tell myself where to start. So am I starting on the left or the right? On the right, because the whole numbers that are even go right. This is even. This is odd. And then the 5/6 I look at next, and that is either less than a half or bigger than a half. What is it this case? Bigger than a half. So I pass the halfway mark, and I know that it's in the second quadrant. In that second quadrant, I would already know my coordinate point because it's the over 6. My sine would be positive. My cosine would be negative. My tangent would be negative. All right, then number 2 says 11 pi over 3, so it's an over 3. I know that coordinate point is a 1/2 root 3 over 2, and my tangent is root 3. This is bigger than 2, so 11 divided by 3 is 3 and 2/3. Now it's odd, right? Odd goes where? Left. And then 2/3, less than a half or bigger than a half? Bigger than a half. So I'm in the fourth quadrant where cosine is positive, sine would be negative, and tangent would be negative. So I know sine, negative root 3 over 2, cosine, 1/2, tan, negative root 3. If it had asked for it, this didn't, but the quiz will. Cosecant negative 2 root 3 over 3. Secant 2 cotangent negative root 3 over 3. Yep.
Did you also find like the complementary?
You can find the coterminal. That's what you mean? Yeah. You could just keep subtracting 2 pi till you get it to be on your unit circle. It will just stink if it's something super big that you have to keep doing it. Yeah. All right, then came your even odd functions. So remember, the even functions mean that even if you change the sign on the angle, you don't change the sign on the trig function. The odds, you change. Evens are cosine and secant. So if I give you the tangent of t is 4/5, what would be the tangent of negative t? Do you change it or keep it? Change it. So it's negative 4/5. And then what would be the cosecant of t? Good. It's the reciprocal of the original angle, which was positive. So I just flip it.
If it's cosine, you don't change, right?
Cosine and secant, you don't change. Okay, then the calculator comes for the next two. Again, these will be test questions, not quiz questions, but let's practice them. Okay, secant of 4 pi over 7 is 1 over cosine 4 pi over 7. Is this in radians or degrees? Radians. So we're going to make sure the calculator's in radians. 1 divided by cosine 4 pi divided by 7. Negative 4.494. Let's take it around. Yeah. Oh, 4 decimal places. Oh, it's the same because it's 395. So this bumps that guy, which bumps that guy. Negative 4.4940 would be the secant of 4 pi over 7. And then number 5, cotangent of 35 degrees. This becomes 1 over tan 35, and this is in degrees. So I change my mode from radians to degrees. 1 divided by tan 35. 1.4281. Yep.
I put 1 over tangent 35. It was still in radians, and I just put the little degree.
If you put the degree symbol, it's fine. Yeah. There's no way to reverse that. Like, there's no way to show that it's radians, but you can do that for degrees. Yep. Questions on any of the warm-up? Okay, so let's talk concepts that are on your quiz, okay? It's just 2 sections. In 4.1, you had a lot of little concepts, right? 4.2's heavy focus was unit circle, but it also has your odd functions. So in 4.1, you got to know how to go from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So if I give you something in degrees and I want to go to radians, I'm going to take theta and I'm going to multiply it times pi over 180. If I'm in radians and I want to go to degrees, I'm going to take theta and I'm going to multiply it times 180 over pi. You'll want to simplify, like every answer should be simplified as much as it possibly can. These will not be with a calculator, so you'll leave them in terms of pi if pi is in your answer, and you'll just make sure they're simplified. All right, then we did coterminal in both degrees and radians. If I'm in degrees, how do I find a coterminal? Add or subtract 360. So if I want to get it positive and it starts negative, I'm going to add 360. If I want to get it negative, it starts positive, I'm going to subtract 360. Remember that sometimes you'll have to do it more than once. If it is negative 800, I'm going to have to add 360 3 times to get it to become positive. Okay. And then for radians, what do you add? Or subtract? Good. Add or subtract 2 pi. Then we had complementary and supplementary. Complementary means they add up to 90 degrees. 90 degrees is the equivalent of 2 pi. So in degrees, we're going to do 90 minus theta. In radians, we're going to do pi over 2 minus theta. And then supplementary is 180. So in degrees, we're going to do 180 minus theta. And in radians, we're going to do pi minus theta. And these must be positive. Okay? If you get a negative number, it doesn't exist. The answer doesn't exist. So if it's bigger than 2 pi or bigger than 90, it doesn't have a complement. And if it's bigger than 180 or bigger than pi, then it doesn't have a supplement. So your answer there would be doesn't exist, not a negative number. You put a negative number, it's wrong. You have to say it doesn't exist, okay? And then in this section, we had arc length. What's the formula for arc length? Good. S equals theta times radius. And what's important about theta? Good. Must be in radians. If you can do all that stuff, 4-1 is easy. Okay? Just be careful with your, like, simplifying. Be careful with your subtracting. People make interesting life choices when it goes to stuff like that. Okay? And then 4-2 was your unit circle. So you're going to fill in your unit. I would say fill in your unit circle first. Like, start at the back. Fill in your unit circle and then go back and answer the questions. You don't need the unit circle for all of 4-1, but you're going to need it when it asks you to find sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, and cotangent of the angles. So the cosine is your x, the sine is your y, the tan is your y over your x. The secant would be the reciprocal of your cosine. So I'd flip my cosine or do 1 over x. The cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. I flip it or I do 1 over y. And the cotangent is x over y. And then we end with what we just ended the units, the warm up on, which is even and odd. So your even functions are cosine and secant. And your odd functions are sine, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. Even means even if the sign changes on the angle, the sign does not change on the trig function. So the cosine of positive t equals the cosine of negative t. We don't change it. And the secant of t equals the secant of negative t. We don't change them, okay? If I gave you the secant and I asked for the secant of the negative angle, you don't change it. If I gave you the cosine and I asked you for the cosine of the negative angle, you don't change it. Whereas all these other ones change. The sine, if I have the sine of t, then to get to the sine of negative t, I'm going to change the sign. Okay, so same for cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. That sign would literally change. If I tell you the sine of t is 1/3, then the sine of negative t is negative 1/3. You have to change the sign. Questions on any of those?